The lights go out. As the room plunges into darkness, a familiar sense of unease returns. Reardon closes his eyes, listening. The low buzz of electricity fades into the hum of distant cars. Then, the sounds of people, footsteps, the sound of a city bustling with life. His eyes flick open as a wave of sudden relief sweeps over him. He's somewhere familiar. Sort of. People, dogs, coffee shops, buses, life. Despite the chaotic noise, it's comforting. There's little that Reardon can be sure of, but he knows a few things. His name, Reardon. He has naturally white hair and empty, black, soulless eyes. His skin is tinted a bright orange, his thin and gangly frame usually covered in an oversized t-shirt that's covered in mustard stains. He also knows that he smells vaguely like potatoes. Human or not, he plays the part well. As Reardon's bare feet slap against the cold, rough sidewalk, the sting of the asphalt jolts him. His feet are numb, and each step sends a sharp, electrifying shock through him. It's strange, uncomfortable, even painful, but it's different. Nice. All 19 years of his life have been spent behind the walls of Site 6800, living the same day on repeat, watching 10 movies a day, trying to make Dr. Fenwick proud. Walking around an actual city is like stepping into a new, exhilarating world. The sights, the sounds, they draw Reardon in. His eyes dart from one face to the next, lingering on each person who passes by. Men in suits jabber into their phones, barking about buying and selling and something called a grind set. Groups of younger humans, teenagers he thinks they're called, laugh as they walk and talk. In the distance, he spots a long bridge made of red metal disappearing into the horizon, tiny cars trundling across it. Reardon peers into windows, looking past his ghostly reflection. People stand in a line, waiting to order from a big board covered in images of food. There's real food here, actual things to bite, and biting things is one of his two favorite things. A deafening noise shatters Reardon's thoughts. It drowns out the buzz around him. Then, just as quickly, everything goes quiet as people turn to look up at the sky. Reardon copies the others, craning his neck upwards, staring at the source of the noise. A shape looms overhead, casting a long shadow over the city. People stare, mouths open at the underside of the object. A huge, yawning rectangle. A gate. Or a mouth. The mysterious shapes descend through the clouds, lower and lower. The ominous emptiness swallows the light as it gets closer. Then there's another sound, a deafening, shattering cacophony. Reardon jerks his head up. A storm of glass and metal rains down to the street as the top of a nearby building is ripped off. A sliver of glass slices Reardon's arm. A thin streak of blood snakes its way downwards in its wake, but he can't even look at the injury. His eyes are locked on the people. There are people in the building being lifted up into the air, some invisible force is dragging them upwards, swirling and spinning as the mass of people and building parts being thrown around start to ignite in a fiery blaze. Through the howl of the wind and the sounds of the building collapsing, Reardon can hear screams. On the street, a tsunami of panic sweeps through the crowd. People shove and jostle, eyes wide with terror, as they try to flee. But it's useless. There's no escape. Above, the shape plunges lower, pulling more of the building into the vortex. Surrounding buildings shake, walls crumble, and glass shatters. The air is thick with screams as more people and debris are added to the violent storm, sucked up into a fiery tornado. Suddenly, a strange sensation grips Reardon, a weightlessness, like being caught in a current. The cold, abrasive ground vanishes beneath his feet. All around him are the screams of terrified people, thrown around, crushed, burning, dying. And beneath his fear, Reardon is faced with the overwhelming dread of knowing that he's had this exact dream before. The lights flicker on. The burning tornado, filled with thousands of screaming souls. Closer. Closer. Reardon hates waking up. The sterile, oppressive light creeps between his eyelids, stinging his retinas and forcing him out of bed. It's cold, artificial, like everything else around here. The plastic sheets underneath him cling to his skin. Night sweats again. As much as he hates waking up like this day after day, dreaming isn't much of an escape. The nightmare is always the same. He can see a huge spaceship suspended in the sky above a city. A fire tornado spins directly beneath it, devouring everything in its path, sweeping terrified people off the ground, pulling them up into the air, and burning them. Reardon has already told Dr. Fenwick, the containment case manager. Even she's stumped by the dream. By now, you're likely familiar with SCP-001, the designation used by the Foundation to refer to multiple different anomalies. It remains unknown which of these are real and which are falsified, if any of them were truly the first SCP ever encountered by the Foundation, or if these were simply anomalies that were contained before the current SCP numerical designation system was implemented. There have long been rumors about SCP-001, with some claiming that the true nature of this anomaly is intrinsically linked to the Foundation itself. It could shed light on the organization's true untold origin, such as Swan's proposal codenamed the Database, or Man's proposal of the Spiral Path. However, some proposals for SCP-001 aren't at all concerned with the beginnings of the SCP Foundation, but are instead focused on its termination. Daoud Ewan Fullerton's proposal for SCP-001 is one of these. There have been plenty of anomalies that divulge details of events that have still to happen. How the SCP Foundation is able to gain such insight into the future depends on the nature of the anomaly involved. What remains unknown is when or how researcher Fullerton was able to learn of the upcoming events of the 3rd of January 2028. The proposal for SCP-001 doesn't just describe this day that is still years ahead of us, but the preceding days leading up to it too. As for the significance of this date in early January 2028, according to Fullerton, this is the day the SCP Foundation as we know it will be destroyed, and the whole of planet Earth along with it. SCP-001, in the context of Fullerton's proposal, refers to a massive spacecraft. The origins of this interstellar vessel are not divulged in the proposal. However, while the spacecraft is known amongst the Foundation as SCP-001, it carries a different name among the public. In what would usually be a staggering violation of the SCP Foundation's normal operating procedures, the general public is aware of the existence of this anomaly. It is known to most as the January 3rd entity, although some have taken to calling it Tarrare, after it was nicknamed this by NATO. Tarrare was the name of a man born in France around 1772, renowned for having an insatiable appetite. Tarrare was in a permanent state of hunger that could not be satiated no matter how much or what he ate. After being forced to leave home as a teenager, he would find work as a showman, consuming numerous objects that were otherwise inedible to ordinary people. During various medical tests conducted over the course of his life, Tarrare ate live cats, snakes, lizards, entire eels, and even puppies. Modern doctors have since concluded that Tarrare likely had polyphagia, an excessive hunger and ability to ingest a wide variety of not just food, but inedible objects too. Why would NATO want to associate SCP-001, a spacecraft, with the endless appetite of an 18th century Frenchman? Well, Fullerton's proposal does shed some unnerving light that makes it easy to see why people took to calling it Tarrare. Measuring 20.58 kilometers in length, SCP-001 is a huge trapezoidal shape. It is almost 3.5 kilometers tall and just over 1.3 kilometers wide. Deep space probes and satellite imaging have revealed that this is no flat flying disk. The top of SCP-001 is occupied by a series of exactly 492 structures, each of varying shapes, heights, and sizes. However, closer examination of the images has revealed that these structures appear to be skyscrapers. The underside of the ship is predominantly comprised of a rectangle that covers around 79% of the craft's base. This area of the vessel is referred to as the gate. Unmanned probes have revealed that this seemingly open rectangular area leads to a space that cannot be observed directly, but is estimated to be considerably bigger than the ship itself. It is unknown if this rectangular opening leads inside the ship, or if the internal space within is located elsewhere. Despite their best efforts in limited time, the SCP Foundation has been unable to determine the exact mass and volume of the unobservable space. Some theories emerged among researchers that the ship itself was dimensionally transcendental and contained a pocket dimension far larger than the exterior of the ship would suggest. The possibility of exploring this further, however, is next to none. Naturally, upon learning of SCP-001's existence in outer space, the SCP Foundation made numerous attempts to contact the vessel. Messages were beamed directly into space to establish some form of diplomatic communication with SCP-001, but no response was ever given. There was radio silence. No transmissions of any kind were ever sent from SCP-001 or received by the Foundation. Nobody at the Foundation was certain that SCP-001 was a manned vessel after all. Some speculated that a disaster of some kind could have occurred on board the spacecraft, setting it adrift. However, based on the observations made of the ship's trajectory, it seemed to be heading directly on a steady route towards Earth. Speculation that there might still be members of the crew on board the ship, either deceased or in suspended animation, has still remained prevalent among some of the researchers. Others have refuted these claims, instead determining SCP-001 to be an interstellar entity of some kind, a leviathan creature floating through space, as opposed to a mechanical vessel. However, without any indication of what SCP-001's exterior is made from, speculation is all the Foundation had. They couldn't even tell exactly what means it was employing to propel itself through space. Had there been more time, researchers may well have been able to determine exactly what SCP-001's true nature is. The Foundation first became aware of SCP-001's presence on December 12th in the year 2027. The object was first spotted by deep space telescopes that detected a previously uncatalogued object in orbit around Venus. Around the time that SCP-001 was initially spotted, there were reports of catastrophic changes to the surface of Venus, which left members of both NASA and the SCP Foundation baffled. These changes, it was soon determined, must have been the result of SCP-001 in orbit around the planet. Shortly after the initial detection of SCP-001, the vessel began heading for Earth. With conventional methods of space travel, the distance between the Earth and Venus takes between 120 and 130 days, roughly 4 months' worth of traveling through space. At minimum, the shortest known spaceflight to reach Venus from Earth was 109 days, almost 3.5 months. SCP-001 would cover the 25 million miles between the two planets in just 21 days. Space travel of this speed was impossible for human beings and was only achievable through anomalous means. The Foundation was rapidly running out of options as to how to deal with the anomalous craft, if it was even a craft at all. With time rapidly running out, the SCP Foundation was forced to do something it rarely did: cooperate with other organizations. Despite the best efforts of the Foundation operatives secretly embedded within NASA, the craft's existence was quickly reported to those at the Global Occult Coalition. The GOC, the United Nations official arm for investigating the anomalous, had always kept a close watch on anything outside the norm. This often put them at odds with the SCP Foundation, who are largely unregulated, with no oversight from any world government. Where the GOC operates under the watchful eye of world governments, the Foundation works in the shadows. Although they are both concerned with containing anomalies and protecting the public, the different methodologies of the Foundation and the Coalition have made them uneasy allies at the best of times and outright rivals at the worst. But when the chips are down, you find out who your real friends are. Or in this case, when there's an alien spacecraft hurtling towards Earth with no signs of stopping, it's at least a little easier to let bygones be bygones. SCP Foundation emergency strategists were invited to join members of the Global Occult Coalition's Urgent Response Coordination Unit and work together to devise a suitable way to neutralize SCP-001 before it reached Earth. On its current trajectory, and provided it didn't increase its propulsion speed, the vessel would arrive in the planet's atmosphere in a matter of days. The GOC were typically in favor of the outright destruction of anomalies, whereas the Foundation wasn't against utilizing the SCPs they encountered. But desperate times were truly calling for desperate measures. The Coalition strategists devised several potential options that involved deploying other SCPs to prevent the approach of SCP-001, if not outright destroy the vessel entirely. One of their plans was to have the Foundation call upon SCP-003, a powerful reality bender who often claimed to be the sole creator of the universe, even believed by some to be God himself. Since there were reportedly no known limitations to SCP-003's powers, the Global Occult Coalition suggested it would be fairly easy for him to simply snap his fingers and cause SCP-001 to vanish from existence. The Foundation, however, vetoed this plan, stating in their reasoning that while SCP-003 was friendly, they weren't convinced he was all that trustworthy. There had been rumors circulating among some Foundation researchers that the anomalous reality warper was deceiving them somehow. Some even suggested that SCP-003 had used his abilities to remove a particular Foundation doctor from reality to maintain cover. While that possibility was still being investigated, the Foundation strategy team stated, it was unwise to rely on SCP-003. One of the more ambitious solutions devised by the GOC's strategists was to gather up a group of SCPs who could be easily coerced into assisting the Foundation. This proposed team would be selected for their wide variety of anomalous abilities, in the interest of deploying them as the Earth's ultimate line of defense against SCP-001's approach. There was even the strong consideration that these anomalies could be made to board a shuttle and transported directly to the incoming interstellar vessel. They would then be tasked with disabling SCP-001, diverting its collision course with Earth, or finding some way to destroy it entirely. Foundation staff vehemently refused to accept the GOC's proposal to refer to them as superheroes when considering this course of action. The proposed roster for this anomalous strike team was both strategic and chilling. Leading the team was SCP-049, the Plague Doctor, known for his sympathy toward the Foundation's cause. His ability to kill via direct skin contact made him an ideal candidate in case SCP-001 harbored an extraterrestrial crew. SCP-4494, the Spectre, was also chosen. A physical manifestation of crime fighting, SCP-4494 was the perfect figure to reinforce the mission's purpose, the preservation of human life at any cost. SCP-2800, known to himself as Cactus Man, real name Daniel McIntyre, was a natural choice for the mission. His resilience to extreme heat and ability to survive without water for extended periods made him an ideal candidate for the unknown conditions surrounding SCP-001. His unique defense mechanism, sharp spines he could extrude at will, provided an additional tactical value. If SCP-001 was a living organism rather than just a ship, these spines could potentially target and disable key parts of its brain or central nervous system, neutralizing the threat from within. With lethality in mind, SCP-076-2, also called Able, was considered for this team. As an immortal, surviving in space would be no problem for SCP-076-2. While he was known for aggression and homicidal tendencies, it was hoped that SCP-001 would present enough of a challenge for Able to divert his focus, rather than seeking out and attacking human beings. His additional ability to manifest weapons was thought to have a high level of utility for the mission, as was his superhuman strength. Sure, Pandora's box didn't go all that well in the end, but this was a more desperate situation. Also considered was SCP-3542, real name Renard D. Jacinto, although known to prefer the alias of the Red Fox. SCP-3542 possessed the ontokinetic ability to create items and materials that could be used to help with emergency events. This would lead to him being indispensable in the event of a catastrophic hull breach, should the strike team accidentally damage the interior walls of SCP-001. The Red Fox was also known to be able to teleport to the locations of emergencies to offer aid, leading some GOC strategists to consider the possibility of sending him up to deal with SCP-001 alone. However, once again, the Foundation vetoed this course of action. They claimed that there wasn't enough time to convince the selected anomalies and that they had the potential to pose as much danger to the public as SCP-001. By this point, the SCP Foundation and Global Occult Coalition were days into their strategizing. One of the more daring strategies thrown out was to negotiate a bargain with SCP-738 to have it remove SCP-001. Once again, Foundation researchers denied the request. SCP-738's modus operandi was simple yet insidious. It offered deals in exchange for a price, one that had to match in full the harm or destruction resulting from the deal. Using this devil's deal to neutralize SCP-001 could result in an equivalent catastrophe elsewhere on Earth, With the Foundation strategist refusing to budge and vetoing all suggestions, it soon became apparent to the GOC Urgent Response Coordinators that something else was going on here. It didn't take long for accusations of stalling to start being levied against the Foundation. Accusations that were, as it turned out, correct. Coalition coordinators informed their security forces that the Foundation's personnel were only present to intentionally delay strategizing efforts. However, the moment that GOC security entered the meeting room, all of the Foundation strategists lay dead. Each one of them had been issued with capsules of termination compound CF-12, a 92% effective drug developed by the Foundation that, when taken orally, induced a momentary euphoric state, followed by a quick and painless death. The SCP Foundation had no intention of cooperating with the Global Occult Coalition. The strategist team had really just stalled, while the Foundation's real contingency plan for SCP-001 went underway. Project Valkyria had long been established as the Foundation's go-to strategy for this exact scenario. They knew that there was no feasible means of containing SCP-001, even temporarily. So instead, while their strategists distracted the GOC, the remaining personnel of the Foundation had focused their efforts on an interstellar evacuation of the planet. But they didn't have the time to take nearly 8 billion civilians to the stars either. Not all Foundation personnel were selected to join Project Valkyria. Only a chosen few received the opportunity to participate. The rest were left behind on Earth with CF-12 termination capsules. As SCP-001 entered Earth's upper atmosphere, the Foundation escaped into space. Those left behind didn't survive for long, meaning there was nobody left equipped to stop the oncoming spacecraft. The Global Occult Coalition was left scrambling to launch whatever armed response they could muster, mobilizing their assets within the United States and Canadian militaries. But it wouldn't matter. As SCP-001 reached just over 12 kilometers above ground level, the internal temperature below the rectangular gate section increased. Thermal imaging readings showed it elevating to around 1700 degrees Celsius, hot enough to incinerate organic life and melt most inorganic materials on Earth. Huge portions of buildings, entire city blocks, people were all pulled upwards into the gate of SCP-001. SCP-001 hadn't come to attack the Earth. There was no invasion, no subjugation, not even any alien abductions. It was there to feed, just like Tarrare. Military jets scrambled by the Coalition screamed through the air, launching missiles at the ship, but their projectiles were drawn into the vortices, along with the planes they were fired from. Despite the best efforts of an underprepared GOC, nothing worked. All military countermeasures were useless against SCP-001. Running out of options, they attempted their ultimate resort, a nuclear strike. It also failed. The nuclear device fired at SCP-001 entered the seemingly endless space within its mouth. Detonation was reported, but no change was observed. There was no damage, no flash of light, not so much as a sound. It took SCP-001 a little under 17 and a half minutes to consume Mount Rainier in Washington. The entirety of downtown Seattle was pulled into the vortex and incinerated in just over 2 hours. Within 3 months, 2.3 million human lives were lost across North America. To add salt to the wound, a transmission was received from the Foundation across all official channels only days after SCP-001's assault began. The automated message stated, "Project Valkyria is no longer accepting new passengers. If you are seeing this message, you will never be forgotten." But if all of this is true and has or will come to pass, then how do the lights at Foundation Site 6800 still flicker above Reardon? Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-5056, The Constant Companions.